All right. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about Neal McDonough. This one, this is more serious. I guess not serious. It's not a serious topic, but it's, I thought this was really interesting. Because we talk, I got into a discussion with someone the other day about what an intimacy coordinator is, which is a position in Hollywood where they literally have to hire people now because of Harvey Weinstein. To not rape people, I guess.
Oh my God! Don't say that.
That's not what it's like. They're there to make sure. They're there to make sure that everyone feels comfortable while shooting sex scenes on. You'd think this would have been a position like. I mean, it seems ridiculous. It seems
it's
like
only a problem because they're inserting so many more sex scenes than used to be in film.
It's really funny because they were talking, like, I was like looking up, I was like trying to find an old article relating to intimacy coordinators, and all I could find out was like, why isn't there more sex in Bridgerton season 2? And they're like mad because Hollywood's obsessed with sex. And so Neal McDonough says he relied on his faith after being blacklisted in Hollywood. You can get through anything, he says. So he relied on his faith to cope with tough times in Hollywood. And he says that this is because that he was blacklisted because he refused to shoot sex scenes. He claims that that's like,
really?
Yes. So he says, now I'm gonna hold him accountable here in a weird way.
You're an actor, dude. Grow up.
Not that. I've watched Neal McDonough for a long time. Okay, he played a really great character in a show called Justified. He was Damien Dark in the Arrowverse, in a lot of stuff before. He was even in Sonic. He was in like
he was in Suits.
He was in Suits. Like he's one of those actors. He's really charismatic, and he's one of those people like when you see him, you know you've seen him before, but you might not know his name.
Absolutely, he's the ultimate actor for that.
Yes, but what I'm saying is like he's like my career suffered. I looked back at his IMDb, and there's literally not a year where there isn't at least 2 projects there. So maybe he worked more usually, and then in that year, the years that he's talking about, he just worked less. But that's not what I think of when I think of blacklisting.
But he's like minor roles,
but
typically
he's like he's usually like a very good guest star.
He would have gotten major roles.
That's what I'm saying.
But he blacklisted.
So it says in 2010 the actor claimed he was fired 3 days into filming the ABC series Scoundrels because he wouldn't agree to on-screen sex scenes. While the show only ran for 1 season, the 56-year-old said that he was blacklisted from the industry. There was a time when I wasn't working, the 56-year-old told Fox News Digital. I couldn't get a job because people thought I was this crazy religious guy, but that wasn't the case. I love my wife, but I love my acting too. I was hopeful that at some point someone would give me a chance again. The devout Catholic's clause wasn't new. From 2008 to 2009, McDonough starred in Desperate Housewives, where he played Nicolette Sheridan's husband. McDonough had a no kissing rule that prompted the show's creator Mark Cherry to get creative with the writing. McDonough, who married his wife, I don't know how to pronounce that name, Ruve.
Yeah.
In 2003, he said, I won't kiss any woman because these lips are meant for one woman. So he is a very, very
that's classy as hell.
That's a classy dude.
You're in a wrong industry, buddy. I don't know what to tell you.
And I brought this up to Mary earlier because I was mentioning that he played a character on the show called Justified named Quarles, who was basically like a mid-level he's like a middleman, mid-level dude for like a Detroit crime family working in Kentucky who was abused as a child. That comes out, and then he had past issues with drugs, and in his like the last kind of episode or two, it's probably the last 2 or 3 episodes of his arc, he kind of relapses and falls into this really bad drug rabbit hole where he's like using constantly, he's like smoking oxys and shit like that. And my question to Mary was, I said, from a religious perspective, is it worse? Is it as bad or different to simulate heavy drug use as a crime boss from a Detroit family who regularly kills people? Is that somehow different than simulating sexual acts with someone in a show? Like I wanted your perspective on that.
Yeah. So what I thought was to use 2 characters having sex as a plot point in a movie or a TV show, you don't have to show the whole thing.
Right.
But for something like drug use, you can't just have him like look at drugs and then fade to black. Like
there is the Hitchcock method.
I think that or Tarantino, like pan away.
They'll pan up.
Scene can at least be done in a veiled way or a hinted way, whereas like it's harder to do that with someone killing another person or like doing drugs.
So he should not be portraying characters that kill people either?
No, I'm saying it's easier to show that in like graphic detail just as a plot point, but like a sex scene does not have to be in graphic detail to be the plot point.
Like it could begin like with them almost embracing in Fade to Black and then them laying on the bed, you know?
Do you remember the scene in A Dark Knight when the Joker gets brought in the garbage bag into the mob boss's den on the pool table, and then he gets up and he puts the knife in his mouth. That's Michael Jai White's in his mouth, and he talks about how he's taking over his organization, and then it cuts just as he motions, and it's basically to imply that he threw the knife through the back of his throat or out the side of his mouth, but they don't actually show it. It's done all through expert cutting and good audio.
And that takes more effort, I think, than showing everything.
Exactly, and to me, it's more artistic that way. But
but for example, in Reservoir Dogs, there's that scene where I think Mr. Blonde is cutting the ear off.
Yep,
and it was like it pans away, but you hear like the audio and the gruesome yelling. And in some ways it's more palatable. Yeah. But in other ways it's gruesome because like
you fear more what you are not
what you don't see. It's like, oh my God.
So maybe it would be better for like, but in these industries, they know that sex sells and they know that that's an easy way to market their product, unfortunately. Which is funny too, because they look down on like the porn industry, but then they're just doing porn light. Anyways.
Well, I mean, in Euphoria, they did hire an actual porn star as an actress, so I think the lines are going to start to get really blurred.
That's happened.
Chloe Cherry.
Yeah, that's happened to that industry.
And they have
before.
very graphic sex scenes in Euphoria.
Yeah. There's a blonde girl that they're like taking her for all they're worth in that show.
That's Sydney Sweeney. I mean, they do it with all of the characters.
Oh, really?
And it's just when you think about it,
we covered
they're
that.
Literally playing underage people. Like, why do you want to simulate that?
That's the creepy part. I was looking into that when we were, because I was like, aren't they high schoolers in the show?
It's even worse, yeah.
I was like looking into it, and it's like apparently like in the porn industry, they're not allowed to pretend to be underage.
In some countries, it's like they won't even let petite chicks do porn.
So like they're like that industry's not even allowed to do it as like a storyline, right?
But we have it on HBO.
But HBO can go ahead and just do it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. Like that's so he goes on, he says, I remember falling to my knees and saying, God, why have you forgotten about me? Why am I being punished so much? McDonough recalls. And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I realized what self-absorbed questions those were. God has given me so much. We all experience challenges in our lives. I should be grateful and thankful for all the blessings I'm given. And that sentiment rings very, very true to me, because I think that's a very important thing that a lot of people kind of fall away from these days, is the importance of gratitude, even when you're struggling. I bring that up fairly regularly here.
I'm quite happy about how self-aware he is, honestly.
Yep. He says right here, says, that's when when McDonough said Graham Yost called the star of the screenwriter for previously worked with on Bands of Brothers in 2001, and he called him up to be on Justified. So he says, I remember a few minutes later, I was sitting there at a kitchen table with Rouvet. Is it Rouvet? I feel
it's
like
Rouvet. You saw the accent on the E.
Rouvet. He said, Graham called and said, hey, do you want to play the villain for the first episode or two of Justified? I said, yes, I do. And after that first take, he came up to me and said, you want to play the villain for a whole year? Didn't you know that was my game plan? That's what I'm going to do. Like he's great. Now if anybody here, I've sang the praises of this show 1,000 times over. If you want an example of expertly done, really, really, identifiable dialogue that is that makes the world feel extremely real, that is the show that you a great example of a show you want to watch. We had Tim had Nick Searcy on IRL. He was in that show. It's Timothy Oliphant, or Oliphant, some say. I don't know which one it is. It's great. It's on Amazon Prime or Hulu, but it's a show I recommend everybody check out. They're actually bringing it back for a limited series based on another one of the books from that. It's a character. The series is called Fire in the Hole. It's an Elmore Leonard book, right? And he's that's what that show, the character of Raylan Gibbons, is based on. And they're bringing it back for like a single mini series in the next year. So I recommend anybody, just off topic, to go and watch Justified and then watch the mini series when it comes out.
Cool.
Because after Justified, everything was kind of forgotten. I was determined to give her a really great performance, and I did. And I realized that perhaps I was just taking some of my acting for granted. I was working all the time, but perhaps I wasn't just dialed in enough in terms of what I could really do as an actor. I came out of this on the other side, he continued. I've been working so much in the last several years. I couldn't be more thankful. I thank God every day for all the blessings I'm given, even during challenging times. See, I don't really take this as being like Blacklisted, I take it as like he had like a slump for like maybe a year or a couple of months, and like it was kind of punched up to be that.
There are legitimate cases of blacklisting, though.
Oh yeah.
Yes, especially for religious people.
Just not one of them.
I get like after the Passion of the Christ came out, Jim Caviezel got very little work, and he was very hot at that time. Frequency and all of his other projects, which he did really well. The other one with Denzel Washington. But very, very good actor that kind of just disappeared because Hollywood hated Passion of the Christ.
It's not a moral industry.
No, it's absolutely not. It's the opposite of a moral industry.
Right. So,
it's an amoral industry.
So you're kind of like showing like you're not part of the in-group at that point.
But I like the fact that, I mean, it's not easy to stay open about your religious convictions in an industry like that. Do you think, okay, here's another question for you. As somebody who is religious, is he, and we all know that Hollywood is an immoral industry, is it wrong for him to remain involved in the industry?
It's hard to tell because you can easily trick yourself by saying that you're the change that you want to see in a certain industry or the world, when really you're just participating and being complicit in a lie.
I mean,
what the argument would be that he could, prove that people of his moral standing do belong there, and theoretically more people like him would hopefully join.
Acting isn't inherently like sinful or anything. So
no, the profession isn't, but the culture around it is.
Industry is like highly corrupt.
No, I mean, I understand that, but like what I'm saying, like maybe his thing might be like his rationalization might be that acting isn't inherently evil, and like I'm an inherently good guy, so like I'll bring whatever like my values to it, but it's like like you could be the classiest guy in a mob.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, like there's a fascination with bad guys who are somehow not classy. I don't think classy is the right word, but like people who have like principles.
Like Pablo Escobar, he'd get a bunch of money and he'd donate it to the poor. Like he has some interesting values, but ultimately he's a murderer.
Yeah, there's a fascination with that type of dichotomy in those industries. So I would like to see somebody like him speak more about it, but I think he'd be afraid, and rightfully so, would be afraid to want to. I mean, this is new, and he just did Adam Carolla the other day, so I don't know, it's because his new thing, Boone or whatever, his new show is coming out, so he's on kind of like a weird press tour, but that interview I thought was interesting because all of them were kind of highlighting how faith played a role in that for him. So I find that to be interesting that he's not afraid to at least speak on it now.
It's something celebrities are allowed to talk about, but that's all. Like, you can't go too far and be too explicit about it before people get mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like at an Oscar, thank God, and that's it.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, you don't want to, like Chris Pratt, that's where he rides the line sometimes.
That's why they
you have to be religious in a very non-offensive way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even necessarily.
What does that even mean anymore, right?
I don't even know how I feel if I disagree. I was like, like as long as they're not preaching, I don't like when people preach to me stuff that I don't agree with. So, I mean, if somebody disagrees with it, that's fine. But it's like, if their goal is to reach the most amount of people, then the people who are paying their paychecks are likely, it's less about religion and more about money, that they don't want to get pigeonholed into one certain area that won't make them more money.
I don't know. Those movies make a lot of money.
The religious movies?
Yeah.
Which ones?
Other than the Passion of the Christ, which ones?
Oh man, like I don't know. I have to research it, but like I think they did what's the name of this app? There's like a religious.
The Chosen.
I don't know.
The
God
Chosen
friended
is
me.
an independently funded show
They
based
do
on the
well.
Gospels that is like completely crowdfunded and has its own app to stream. If that's what you're talking about, I think it might be.
I think it's it's like Tinder for Christian people.
Bumble? Is that
there
Bumble?
are multiple ones like that.
I don't know the name,
But
but it had a movie, and I think it did pretty well.
The point is, though, me and you have discussed this, that the term faith-based is used to pigeonhole these movies.
Yeah.
And they're looked down upon on the industry.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true. So we'll see where this goes. I hope he keeps getting work because he is a fantastically charismatic actor who...
he's a great straight man.
Yes.
Like he's a good foil for a lot of people.
He, when he was on... Arrow, and he did all those CW. He was like a very good, like talented dude on a network where it's mostly just really hot young people who are not necessarily the most charismatic. They're good looking, but maybe they're not the best actors. But he was very, very good there. But Justified is where I really loved him. So I think people should go and check that out.
He's almost always a villain.
Yes. Well, he kind of he has that that face that just works for.
He just looks like he's sucking on sour grapes all the time.
That's perfect.
He does.
That's perfect. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.